Imagine an object so rare, so coveted, that a single piece commands upwards of $100 million. It sits entirely alone at the absolute apex of exclusivity. This is the Bugatti Type 57S/SC Atlantic Coupé. It is widely considered the true Mona Lisa of the automotive world. Between 1936 and 1938, the Bugatti factory in France produced exactly 4 original examples of this body style, and every single one of those 4 chassis carries its own dramatic, singular history. Look closely at its lines. The Atlantic defies the standard definition of a classic car. It is the absolute zenith of pre-war human ambition, a machine elevated into a priceless, rolling piece of historical art. To understand how this happened, you have to look at the automotive landscape of the 1930s. Back then, a harsh dividing line existed. You either built massive, lumbering luxury coaches for the ultra-wealthy, or you built stripped-down, bare-bones race cars for the track. The man who erased that line was Jean Bugatti, the son of the company's founder, Ettore Bugatti. Jean had a radical vision. He wanted to take uncompromised pre-war racing technology and wrap it inside breathtaking aerodynamic Art Deco styling. That vision starts with the letters in its name. The S stood for surbaissé, the French word for lowered. Jean took the standard Type 57 frame and completely re-engineered it. He routed the rear axles straight through the chassis rails, rather than sliding it underneath them, which instantly dropped the entire vehicle's profile closer to the ground. The C stood for compressor. He integrated a Roots-type supercharger, an air compressor that forces extra oxygen into the engine, giving the powertrain a massive boost in output. By forcing raw, aggressive racing architecture to serve his high art design, Jean Bugatti drafted the blueprint for what we now call the modern supercar. The exterior of the Atlantic is defined by a dramatic, sweeping teardrop silhouette. The elongated fenders flow into an oval rear end that tapers downward, sitting almost entirely flush with the ground. But its most defining physical feature is the riveted dorsal seam. It runs perfectly down the center, from the split hood all the way to the tail, terminating right above a tight cluster of 6 ultra-thin exhaust pipes. Those rivets originated as a strict engineering necessity. Jean built the very first prototype out of electron, a highly flammable magnesium-aluminum alloy. Because electron could easily ignite if welded, the body panels had to be riveted together externally. When it came time to build the production Atlantics, Bugatti switched to standard, safer aluminum, which could be welded. Yet Jean refused to smooth out the body. He kept those aggressive external rivets purely as a dramatic aesthetic statement. To compensate for that incredibly low roofline, the doors were designed to cut deeply upward into the roof panel itself. This allowed passengers to step in and out comfortably without hitting their heads. Underneath that split hood sits a supercharged 3.3-liter inline-8 engine, producing 200 horsepower. It was capable of pushing the car past 124 miles per hour, an astonishing feat for the 30s. Fitting that engine under such a low hood even required a dry sump lubrication system, storing the engine oil in a separate tank rather than a deep pan underneath. Every seemingly effortless curve you see on the Atlantic was hard-fought. The beauty is the direct result of extreme, bespoke mechanical workarounds. Once they left the factory floor, those 4 original chassis went out into the world and met wildly different fates. The very first one produced was delivered to Victor Rothschild in 1936. Known as the Rothschild Atlantic, you can identify it by the headlights integrated flush into the front fenders. Today, it stands as the most original surviving example of the 4. Compare that to the Holtzschuh Atlantic. In 1955, that chassis was struck by a train at a level crossing in France. Both occupants were killed instantly, and the car was entirely obliterated. Decades later, a dedicated team purchased the shattered, unsalvageable remains. They spent years painstakingly reconstructing the vehicle piece by piece around a new engine block. These contrasting histories, one perfectly preserved, the other violently shattered, underscore a harsh reality. Even the finest physical art is fragile in the face of random, real-world events. Then there is the Pope Atlantic, widely considered the most perfectly restored and meticulously maintained example in existence. Notice how its headlights stand free from the fenders, in separate bullet-shaped pods. This specific car is currently owned by fashion designer Ralph Lauren, who had it restored to its pristine black finish. But the legend of the Atlantic is ultimately defined by the one car we can't see today, chassis 57453, known simply as La Voiture Noire, the black car. This was Jean Bugatti's personal factory vehicle. Free from client requests, it possessed the absolute purest realization of his design. In 1940, as the German army invaded France during World War II, Bugatti engineers scrambled to move the factory's assets to safety in Bordeaux. Somewhere along that frantic journey, La Voiture Noire vanished entirely. It hasn't been seen since. That disappearance transformed the Atlantic from a rare piece of automotive history into a mythological ghost story. Jean Bugatti died testing a race car just before the war began. By 1945, his father's factory was in ruins, and the era of handcrafted, bespoke automotive art had vanished. Today, the surviving chassis are tightly held in private collections. When they do change hands, their market value easily ranges between $40 and $100 million. And if La Voiture Noire is ever discovered sitting forgotten in a European barn, experts currently estimate its value would instantly shatter all known world records, soaring well beyond the $100 million mark. This $100 million valuation reflects a unique intersection of history, scarcity, and uncompromising design. The Atlantic is the final, peak expression of pre-war craftsmanship. If you enjoyed this journey into automotive history, please like this video, share it with a fellow enthusiast, and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories. Thanks for watching.